grotesque from the real world, combined it with the overheated seduction of a romance novel, and came up with a story for the ages.
Tell me, Prince. Tell me of your home.
It's a reflection of the way the 20th century went in its second half.
Vampires were becoming more like us. Or maybe it was the other way around. Pop culture was creating a subculture of vampire wannabes.
If we want to talk about the vampire subculture, I would say it got its start in Dark Shadows, in the reluctant vampire Barnabas Collins. After Dracula, he's really the first vampire to penetrate our cultural consciousness and give us a way to see from the vampire's point of view.
Then along came Anne Rice, the most influential vampire storyteller since Bram Stoker. Unlike Dracula, her vampires agonize over their identities and ooze charisma and sensuality.
It's not like Dracula. We used to have vampires who came up out of coffins and looked like death warmed over. Now these vampires are quite attractive, so people begin to identify with them.
If you think about Interview with the Vampire, it was Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, the sexiest men of our time, playing immortals, playing the part of people who were vampires, who were able to drink blood and bloodlust, and it was, but yet it was sensual, and it was, there's something so hot and erotic about it. And you think about, you know, that whole grasping of the neck.
Modern vampires have become ever more erotic creatures of all sexual persuasions. And just as they had a century earlier, they can speak to deadly serious realities.
It's not at all surprising that the homoeroticizing of vampires coincided with the onset of the AIDS epidemic. And suddenly all of these classic themes about vampires, about blood contamination, about mysterious wasting illnesses, about death at an early age, suddenly took on a reality that had been, you know, really lost in popular culture.
What never seems to get lost in the popular culture is Dracula himself.
Count Dracula sleeps in this coffin, but rises every night at sunset. Chick is right. This is awful silly stuff.
From movies to merchandising, Bram Stoker might not recognize what we've done with his famous creation, but if he owned a share of the profits, he probably wouldn't mind.
The vampire is truly the universal monster. It's got something for everybody. Frankenstein doesn't have that appeal. Giants don't have that appeal. Unicorns don't have that appeal. It's only the vampire that really gets there for everyone. The vampire is the most human of monsters.
They're sexy, fang-bearing, blood-drinking, and often not so nice. Female vampires have captivated both men and women for decades. None more, perhaps, than Vampirella.
I like to tell people that Vampirella stands at the crossroads of sex and death.
Part Playboy bunny, part superhero. She's been a collector's item and the reigning queen of vampire girls for more than 30 years.
People love the bravery of seeing this woman run around and fight evil in a costume like this. They love seeing that she has no fear whatsoever about being a deliberately sexual woman.
She may be a bad girl, but that doesn't make her a bad role model. After all, she fights evil and often wins.
Characters like Vampirella tell these women to find their place in society and to define it and to defend it.
And there are strong women role models in the modern-day vampire community. But unlike Vampirella, some are more likely to be found in broad daylight, nurturing their garden, than in a graveyard at night.
You don't want to stand out. You don't want people to point at your children and say, oh, look, her mommy's her Dracula's bride.
For Lady C.G., the whole Dracula's bride thing takes a back seat to simple family values.
My kids are absolutely my best friends. I love them. Yeah. I have 4, grown.
Make no mistake, Lady C.G. is a bona fide blood-drinking vampire. But she's also the epitome of a small-town mom. A grandmother, in fact.
We're not creeping in anybody's windows at night. At least I sure hope nobody is. At least uninvited. And I don't think that it's realistic to go around looking for immortal vampires who are raised from the dead, looking to drain people of blood.
I'm still the oldest one here, I think.
At 42, she's an elder in the vampire community. A kind of den mother for fellow vampires. She holds a regular gathering by the fireside.
The coven meets on Sunday nights. We wanted a time when we could just provide us time and space for our people where they could come and sit and just be themselves.
Hey, that's cool.
One of her sons, Jay Frost, often attends.
Well, no, we can't.
My mother's an excellent person. She's willing to get out there and deal with the people and help people to walk through the things she had to deal with as a younger.
Somebody said, oh, this is what you need. And so I drank. Just a small cut on his arm, you know, it was very sensual, very sexual. But the cravings went away for weeks.
C.G. married and had children, all the while plagued with confusion, strange dreams, and that craving, which returned and then refused to go away.
I thought, well, what's wrong with me? You know, am I insane? What I did discover, though, quite by accident, was that eating rare steaks helped. It couldn't just be rare. It had to be blood on the plate rare. But that it helped. The cravings would go away.
Lady C.G.'s thirst for blood persisted, and so did the questions. She was in her early 30s when she ventured out onto the internet and finally realized with a shocking clarity that she was not alone.
Suddenly, I'm meeting all these people who are like me. And they all have vampire-type connections, too. And they need blood, too, so... And it begins to, well, maybe I'm not crazy.
In fact, after her grandfather died, C.G. began to understand a family secret that would help answer so many of her questions.
Vampirism runs in my mother's side of the family. And it wasn't something that was openly talked about because nobody openly talked about it back then. Nobody did.
It all began to add up, piece by piece, an awakening. Not of who she was, but of what she was. That process of acceptance, what vampires call awakening, can be difficult, particularly for sanguinarians, blood drinkers, who may feel the need to hide their nature from the outside world.
Right now it is very frightening to come out of the coffin, so to speak.
A lot of us are tired of hiding. This is what we are. This is what we've always been.
Taryn and Tanit live in rural Mississippi. Like C.G., they are in some ways the quintessential vampires next door. These vampires have concealed their vampirism, even from their family and friends, until now.